what percentage of couples who have come to you in the church, this was some new, experience that just hit their marriage after all these years versus those who've been dealing with this same thing for years?
Honestly, I haven't had new situations. All of the situations, unfortunately, have been existing situations. It just got to the point where there was a breaking point where the spouse said, I just can't take it anymore. If I don't do something now, if I don't make a phone call, if I don't reach out for help, if I don't expose where we are now, I'm going to lose my mind.
Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to After Infidelity. My name is Hassani Pettiford. I'm the co-founder of Couples Academy and an infidelity recovery specialist, and I'm excited about today's conversation because we're going to be talking about infidelity within the church. And what a long overdue conversation, because it's a very real thing. And we're not here to expose the church, but we are here to really address those who have gone through some level of crisis. They're looking for help and they do not know where to turn. So I'm expecting us to have a really interesting conversation. There would be no better person to have as a part of this conversation than my dear friend Roland Bradley. You've been in ministry for almost 30 years, but you're also a practitioner who works with couples who've been through crisis. So thanks for being on the podcast.
Thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here.
I want you to start off with just telling us about how widespread the crisis of infidelity in the church really is.
Well, it is very, it's a silent assassin right now. It is a pandemic of its own right.
Wow.
That's happening in the Christian church today, simply because no one wants to talk about it. No one wants to reveal the truth about the infidelity that is running rampant in the church. I've had so many couples call in to say that they're experiencing infidelity right in the church, right under the pastor's nose, right under the deaconess nose, right under their family's noses, that this is going on.
Now, listen, I just want to say before we continue with this conversation that the church doesn't have a monopoly on immorality. You know, we have worked with couples who are Muslim, who are Jewish, Hindu. We work with atheists, agnostics, people of all faith traditions or not. And it's widespread everywhere. But the reason why we're talking about this today is because so many people are starving and longing for help and cannot find them. And so we want to be a beacon of light to those who are in a very dark place, to let them know that even though you're in the church, you don't have to hide, you don't have to protect an image and suffer in silence. There is help for you. You know, Roland, we're talking about infidelity in the church, but really we're talking about sex, right? And so, you know, there's a lot of couples who get married who experience crisis in this particular area because you have two people from two different family upbringings, two different potential faith traditions, two different interpretations of what they think sex should be in a marriage. And that's what oftentimes causes the conflict. There are many people who are having sex before they get married, and now they get married to their Christian spouse, and sex looks and feels very different. And oftentimes that leads to disappointment, it leads to disconnection, and it leads to betrayal. Kind of unpack that a little bit.
The problem that we're having is that we never have the conversation around sex before we actually come together as a married couple. We either come together for the first time or we come together having had some experiences. And our experiences have exposed us to our preferences. And so when we come together in a sacred place that's supposed to be safe for us, we come in with baggage, if you would. And because you don't perform the way she performed, or you don't make me feel how he makes me feel, now I'm disappointed and I'm let down. And the conversation was never had before we got together. And so here we are, we're functioning, but we're not living for one another. We cannot come together and be on the same page for one another because you don't make me feel, you don't look how they look. And because we didn't have that conversation prior to, we walk in with unresolved or unsaid expectations.
So, Bible talks about how we should wait till we get married to have sex. And now you really are peeling back a layer as to why that is. Because if I have a sexual history, a certain sexual experience, I'm coming into the marriage with an expectation that it's going to be just as good, just as great, just as explorative. But now we're in this Christian marriage and it's different. Now, this is the challenge. While you have all the freedoms to express whatever you want in the world, the message in the church typically regarding sex is you got to wait till you get married to have sex. And if you've been single, sex is sin, sex is wrong, sex is bad. And now you get married and have the freedom to do whatever you want to do, but you have this deeply embedded belief system that it's bad. So when I'm in the world doing bad things, it's okay to be bad. But once I get married and have to be good, I can't bring those experiences into my marriage bed. So now we have this plain Jane type of sexual experience. And now I'm disappointed because it's not what I once had.
We don't talk about it. We don't share our feelings. We don't give ourselves a chance to lay the landscape of how we want our marriage to look and how we want our marriage to be and how we want our bedroom to feel and look. We take what we have been given, whether it was incorrect doctrine, whether it was our preferences before we came in, but we never take out the time to say, what is it that we desire for ourselves? We should be able to create our own fantasies. We should be able to create our own dynamics of what it is that we desire from each other, because that was the very thing that drew us to each other in the first place. But what happens is, if I'm stuck in my head with incorrect doctrine and I come in, I allow it to overtake the bedroom. We never discuss it. Hence, we just go along and get along.
Wow. I remember Creflo Dollar saying that the one thing that's more powerful than the Word of God is the misinterpretation of the Word of God. And interestingly enough, what's typically being preached from the pulpit regarding sex?
One, like you said, you're not supposed to do it until you get married. If you do it before you get married, you're going to burn, right? We hear all the negative aspects of sex, but never promote that when you come together in God's covenant, that he created sex. He created it for you to enjoy and to have for one another. That's why he says, submit to your own husband, submit to your own wife, because their bodies are now yours. But because we always speak negatively about it from the pulpit, we teach it from the pews, we don't have the full understanding of the benefits that we have from God in our marriages.
So we're talking about incorrect sexual doctrine that impacts the sexual experience that you have in your marriage. And as a result, it can lead to frustration, disappointment, disalignment, and ultimate betrayal. But let's just be clear. Sex is not the only reason why people cheat. There's an incalculable number of reasons. And I want to begin to explore that. One thing that we know that is true is that somehow once you get married, the nature of your relationship shifts and changes. And now it's about bills and babies and work and ministry and extracurricular and your friends. And the relationship is now the last thing on your list of priorities. And so couples lose themselves in this marriage and no longer have the relationship that they once had prior to I do.
I think too many people don't understand that your marriage and your relationship are two different things. Your marriage is your partnership. Your relationship is your companionship. And so oftentimes we have so many couples, they have a great marriage but a poor relationship. Likewise, we have a lot of couples that have a great relationship and a poor marriage because they have not aligned the two as one. We have unhealthy people trying to do healthy things, and because they're not in alignment or they are unhealthy in different areas, they can't get on the same page. And so what happens is we do great things together as a married couple. We make sure the bills are taken care of. He's a great father. She's a great mother. But as far as our relationship, because we don't spend time together, because we're not exploring one another, because we're not looking deep into each other's hearts and minds and souls, we found ourselves drifting away. falling apart. We don't share the same goals. We don't have the same hobbies. We don't share the same insights and visions on things. And so our relationship begin to dwindle and fall apart.
Wow, that's very real. And as a result, couples in the church are struggling. So I want to speak to those who are in the church who've experienced a betrayal in their marriage. And I think it's hit the pulpit and it's also hit the pews. Now, you've worked with a lot of spiritual leaders, pastors, people who are in ministry, and crisis hit their homes, and they're devastated because it wasn't supposed to happen to us. We were the couple that others were looking up to. We were the example. We led marriage ministry for years, and now it's hit our doorstep. I want you to speak to how prevalent that is.
So one of the things that we have to understand, that those of us that are in the pulpit are not exempt from the wiles of the devil. We preach the word, we teach the word, but the devil is still lurking, seeing whom he may devour. And we still have to be responsible to do our own work to make sure that we get what we need for ourselves and our families. When we are tired, when we are hungry, when we are unfulfilled, that's when the devil finds that loophole to creep in. And it doesn't matter who it is. Unfortunately, it could be the secretary, it could be the choir member, it could be the usher, it could be the deaconess, it could be the member. We always find ourselves. The problem that I have, unfortunately, is that though we know these things, we kind of put ourselves in these situations also. We find justifications to find ourselves doing inappropriate things. Why? Because if I have a bad relationship with my spouse and I see an avenue that I can get something from someone else that I'm looking for, I'm going to take that route. We stuck on image so much that we forget the consequence of holding that image.
So you mentioned so many different positions, whether they're in the pulpit preaching, whether they're serving in a particular ministry, maybe they're on the usher board, they're watching the door, maybe they're in the choir. And what we're finding is that when you're serving together for hours, when you're serving together on a ministry for years, you're building relationship. There's a level of intimacy that you engage in because you're with them regularly on teams together, working together, fighting together. And in that, there's a bonding experience, there's a connection that's had, and then what you thought were appropriate platonic interactions soon became very inappropriate. And all of a sudden we see connections leading to chemistry, which leads to sexual exploration. Kind of talk through that experience and how we safeguard ourselves from these type of pitfalls.
Well, the first thing, we have lost the fear of God. There's no fear of conviction, no fear of God, no fear of consequences, no fear. I'll deal with the consequences, or as the old folks would say, I'll cross that bridge when I get to it. We are risk takers. We take chances. And as long as we don't get caught, everything is going to be all right. But we fail to realize that God sees all. He's omnipresent, right? He's everywhere. And what seems to happen is that we think that we're getting away with something because nobody sees us, but someone always sees. How many times have you been out somewhere and you saw someone that you know, but you wasn't in a position to speak to them? You wasn't in a position to let them know that you see them, but you saw them. And we think that we're moving about and we're covering ourselves and nobody sees us, but someone always sees.
Let's go back to we've lost the fear of God. It's interesting because the closer you get to God, and when you're in a position of leadership and authority and influence, you would think that the relationship would be so deep and connecting that there would be this fear. But what we have found, for some, not all, is that you can get so caught up in the work of the Lord that you forgot about the Lord of the work. And you're pouring out for other people to benefit from, but you're not pouring back into yourself. And so it's hard to pour out of an empty vessel. And the level of spiritual intimacy is not where it once was.
I remember watching a program, a particular program, and this young lady happened to be dealing with a pastor. And so she used this example. She took him to his church and she stood him right in front of his pulpit. And as long as he was standing in front of the pulpit, he was that much closer to God. But every time she thought about a sin that he gave her, she told him to take one step back. And every time he thought about something else he did, she told him to take one step back. And the more he did, he found himself moving further and further away from the pulpit that he was at. That place of worship that he was in, one sin, he found himself that far away. And what happens is we do it one time and we get away with it. We do it another time and we get away with it. We do it another time and now we're comfortable because we didn't get caught. We do it another time, now I like what I'm doing. We do it another time, but now she knows me. We do it another time, he makes me feel a certain way. And when we look at where we started and where we are, there's so much space in between ourselves and God. And we don't recognize it until the bottom falls out. We don't recognize how far we are from God until devastation has happened. Then all of a sudden, when unfortunately a baby is produced, or now my spouse is speaking of divorce, now all of a sudden I recognize the wrong that I was doing. Now I recognize the state that I was in. And we justify it to say, to your point, I was working in ministry. And because God is so sovereign, because devastation didn't happen prior to, we thought everything was good.
Wow, that is so true. And so, oftentimes people are in this state of crisis and they display regret, remorse, guilt, shame. And so I wonder, is it because they got exposed? Because to your point, when you first sin, that's when you're the most convicted. But the more you do it, you become more spiritually numb to your sin. And then to your point, we begin to rationalize and justify, and now we're living this double life. And it is not until we're exposed to man. See, that's the difference. God sees what we're doing
all the time.
But it's not until we're exposed before man do these shifts begin to take place.
And unfortunately, because we thought we were getting away with it all along, we just kept doing it over and over and over again.
Okay, so you have a couple, it finally comes out, there's crisis. We don't know what to do. We need help. We've gone to the church. We've gone to counselors and therapists. None of it has worked. We need to find somebody who specializes in this type of trauma. So they come to you because you have years in ministry. You also are an infidelity recovery specialist. Talk about some of the stories, some of the scenarios, some of the couples, and some of the situations that they've come to you with. We don't want to talk about who they are, but what is the typical situation that you find for those who are in ministry? Like, what roles have they been in the church? What level of influence have they had? And how did you bring them through this recovery process?
Well, unfortunately, the last couple of relationships that I've had opportunity to work with, it was the pastor that had stepped out on his wife. And unfortunately, it was a member of the church. This was, at this point, not the first member of the church. This happened to be the second or third member of the church. And it just so happened that this time, this particular lady exposed the fact that they were having relations. They've been married.
Exposed it to the church?
Exposed it to his wife.
Wow. Okay.
Now there is a scenario where that is the truth, that it was exposed to the congregation, but in this particular case, it was exposed to the wife. They've been married for 32 years, and now you put me in a position that I've invested so much into you. I've invested so much into our marriage, and now do I stay or do I go? And some leaders have taken the position to go all in to save their marriages. But then there are others that have taken the position that this is who I am. You knew this is who I was all along. You can take it or you can leave it. Some have produced babies in that situation. I'm talking about pastors. I'm talking about leaders. I'm talking about first ladies that are having to deal with this type of trauma. And not just the first lady, but their children. In some cases, their children's children. Now we don't look at the consequences of these things. So what we've been able to do is pull them in, because a lot of times they are the leaders, they are the ones in charge, and we have to pull them in a place that is safe to say that in this space, I need you to fall back. I am the person in charge to help guide you in a direction that can really save your marriage. It can really save your life, because right now it is on the line.
Let's talk about the difference between Peter and Judas. Many people would say when Peter fell from grace, it was a situational thing. It didn't really speak to his character. That's not who he was. He had a moment of weakness, whereas Judas, it was his nature. I'm putting this in the context of a couple who has experienced an affair. You said when the mistress told the wife, the first lady, she was in a state of crisis and she's thinking about all the time she invested in the marriage, invested in the ministry. But there are some spouses who've always known about their husband or wife's behavior and has turned a blind eye because all that they have, because of their leadership, because of their influence, because of their lifestyle. So many people have come to me talking about things that have existed for years, and now they're just at a breaking point. So what percentage of couples who have come to you in the church, this was some new, experience that just hit their marriage after all these years, versus those who've been dealing with this same thing for years?
Honestly, I haven't had new situations. All of the situations, unfortunately, have been existing situations. It just got to the point where there was a breaking point where the spouse said, I just can't take it anymore. If I don't do something now, if I don't make a phone call, if I don't reach out for help, if I don't expose where we are now, I'm going to lose my mind. So now it becomes detrimental that they have to do something. So I can't say that I've experienced a new couple that is experiencing this for the first time. Most of the couples, unfortunately, that I've been dealing with, we say a blind eye, but they were being loyal to their spouse. They were holding up the integrity of their marriage. They were making sure that the front was good enough for the people.
Interestingly enough, they were protecting their spouse. So though I don't feel safe with you, though I have no security in you, it's my job as a betrayed spouse to now provide you with what you haven't provided me with, protection. I'm protecting your image. I'm protecting your reputation. I'm protecting our legacy. And so it's a sticky situation that a betrayed spouse finds themselves in, and they can only carry this weight for so long.
Until they can't.
Yeah.
And then that's when the phone call is made. That's when someone reaches out for help and say, listen, I need your help right now, because I can't go to the church. I can't go to other colleagues. I cannot go to people that's going to expose my spouse in this vulnerable and parent situation. It's a traumatizing situation. I cannot go to someone to tell them everything that I've been dealing with for year after year after year.
Yeah. And the reality is, it's not just the pulpit. It's in the choir stand.
Oh, absolutely.
It's in the marriage ministry, the leadership amongst the marriage ministry. It's prevalent even in the pews. So we see that the spirit of lust has entered into the church and has run rampant, and there's so many people who are struggling. So let's talk about the couple who comes to you for help. What does recovery look like?
So the first thing we always tell our couples that they have to understand and know, and we make sure that they're well assured that they are in a safe place. So oftentimes, I don't have a safe place with my community, with my friends, in my family, because if I expose this, I'm going to become the person that everybody's going to, I told you so, I knew it all along. Now I'm going to not be respected in the way that I'm respected right now. So when couples come, we let them know, number one, that they're in a safe place.
Let's pause on that. How important is that? Matter of fact, is that something that you start the conversation with? Is that something that because I've noticed that a lot of people in in ministry are very, very, very hesitant to seek help because of they don't know if it'll get out and if it'll destroy their community. So is that a major concern of theirs? And when you articulate that, how do they respond to it?
My first disclaimer before I say anything, before I proceed in any way, every couple that I have come in contact with, the very first thing that I make full assured is that this space is a safe space. I have to make that well known because I want them to be as vulnerable and as transparent as they can possibly be. Yeah. If they're not open and honest, we're just wasting time. So the very, very, very first thing that I do before I even introduce myself, I say, I want you to understand that this is a safe space. And the reaction is you can see literally the weight of burden just literally come off in that moment.
Okay. We're going to get to the recovery process, but I have to ask this. You have someone who may be older than you. Mm-hmm. You have someone who's in a leadership position where they influence hundreds or thousands. There's pride and ego that comes along with that. Talk about the resistance that you may oftentimes get from those in spiritual leadership to submit themselves to your authority, if you will. How are they open? Is it a fluid experience? Do they struggle to really open up? Do they struggle to submit and obey and follow the guidance of somebody else that is considered lower than them, younger than them, possibly married less time than them? Walk me through that.
So funny enough, the craziest thing, most of my couples are much older than I am, number one.
Okay.
They've been married longer than I've been married, number two. But because there's a level of compassion and care and kindness that is presented to them, all of that goes away. Okay. It's not even an issue. When I present myself in a way of letting them know that I'm here to help. When I go to, if I get sick and there's a doctor that's younger than I am, I don't say, oh, don't work on me because you're too young. Don't fix this broken knee that I have because you're too young, right? Don't do this surgery on me to save my life because you're too young. No, I am in a crisis situation and you said that you can help me and you're presenting yourself in a confident way that you can help me. Please, by all means, help me. And so that's what I find. I present myself, my wife and I present ourselves in a way that they are feeling safe. They know that they are coming to a place of compassion. There's no judgment. There's no ridicule. There's no, you should have known better. You should be teaching me. Listen, when you are in a need, you don't start to suggest, I need someone who's more experienced. You need someone who has been where you are and has come out of that situation. Yeah. And it doesn't matter how old they are. I want to know, how do I get off this island of pain to a place of pleasure and peace and prosperity and productivity? Show me, if it worked for you, what did you do to get from where I am to where you are right now?
So listen, I find a lot of couples who make their selection process on their practitioner based upon a number of different things. Is there a cultural alignment, an ethnicity alignment, a belief system alignment? You're a Christian. You've been in ministry for years. Is there a sigh of relief when a Christian couple comes to you knowing that you have a Christian ministerial background? Does your background and your experience in ministry help them also to feel safe working with you?
I want to say yes and no, because what happens is when couples come, they're coming from the church. The last thing they want to hear me say is that I'm a Christian, I'm a minister. Why? Because now, please don't preach the Bible to me. Please don't come and tell me what the other preacher has already told me. So my position, I make it known that yes, I'm a believer. Outside of that, I care, I'm loving, I'm kind, and I'm here to help. And that is what draws people to us.
Wow. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Okay, so let's get back to the recovery process. You've laid the foundation for them. You let them know it's a safe space. You get that messaging out from the very beginning. They now feel comfortable. What's next? Like, what does a recovery process look like? Because I'm on the verge of calling it quits, throwing in the towel. You know what? I can't bear the weight of the ministry anymore. I'm about to break. They're about to know. Save us before we die.
So the first step we take is we look at the situation that they're currently in. What is the marital state that you're in right now? Some people are on the verge of divorce. Some people are, I'm willing to give it one last chance. I'm willing to stick it in for just a little while longer. So let's revamp, let's restructure what the marriage looks like. I often use the example of a person that pulls up to a house. The landscape is beautiful. The house on the outside looks great. They walk in and it's immaculate. Everything is where they want it to be. And we say, this is the house. This is the one that we want, until an inspector comes in, and as soon as he walks in, he can recognize that everything has to be torn down. What do you mean? This is the house of our dream. Wow. I'm like, why do we have to tear it down? Because the inspector has an eye that they can't see. I see some mold over here. I see the foundation cracking over here. And if we don't do something right now, you're going to walk into this situation, or you're going to prolong this situation, and it's going to get worse than it is right now. So I use the example that we have to go in, we have to tear down this whole house, and we have to start from scratch and rebuild the foundation that we want to stand on. And when we do that, and when they hear that, they recognize, you know what? We've been living in this house for over 32 years, and it's been the same way. We haven't painted, we haven't done any structural advancements to where we are right now, and so now we find ourselves breaking down. So I go in establishing the fact that we have to restructure the marriage. Number one. Number two, we have to look at, how did we even get here? What brought us here? For what cause? What reason? Who, when, where, why, how? What led us to this space? When we identify what led us here, because to your point, infidelity is not always sexual. Infidelity is not always, I had an affair with someone outside of my spouse. Infidelity could be a number of things. It could be financial infidelity. It could be emotional infidelity. It can be just a betrayal of the trust that we had. So we have to find out what that situation is, and then put you in a position that we give you the tools so that it doesn't happen again. And then ultimately, that I'm hurt, you're hurt, we're hurt in our own separate ways. When we come together and recognize what that is, we put you in a position that you can be the best version of yourself, number one, for yourself, number two, for each other, but then we have to make you realize that you're doing this for your children. Children. We can't stop just at your children. We want to go beyond your children. We want to make sure that you are well enough to leave a legacy for your children's children. And we're not just talking about money or a house or a car. What do you want your family to say about you? How are you able to hold the family together? What legacy are you going to leave and speak to your family?
Wow. I'm still stuck on tearing everything down, then to build it back up, because some people want to hold on to what they've had, and they just want some patchwork. Let's just get somebody in here just to fix, deal with the mold situation, and patch up that window and put some sealant in that door, and we'll be fine. The idea of letting go of everything that you've established over a 32, 35, 45 year journey together, and starting from scratch, I can imagine just what's going on in the minds of the couples that you work with.
They're confused. They're like, what in the world is this young man talking about? But when we lay out the foundation and the blueprint of what we want our marriage to look like, it gives us the opportunity to build it the way we desire for it to be today. See, when we got married 20 years ago, we had one aspect in mind of what it is that we wanted. 10 years came along, and then we found ourselves in a different state. We had kids and we had careers. But then 10 years later, we we now find ourselves, everything has changed. The world has changed. Everything about marriages have changed. And so we have to be willing to change as well. And so when we take the route of creating a new blueprint for the marriage that we desire to have, now we can make the entryway the way we want it to be. Now we can make this bedroom the way we want it to be. Now we can make the living room 3 feet longer and 3 feet wider, so that way we can entertain the way that we want to, because our circle is either going to get much smaller or we're going to be in a community where it gets much bigger. And how do you want to present yourself in your house?
But I've been married to Clarence for 45 years. Gertrude has been in my life for the last 35 years. They're not going to change. They're going to be who they always have been. Tell me about the struggle, if there is one, helping to shift people's mindsets, because really every battle is won or lost in the mind. And I find that people who say that they're coachable and teachable and willing to learn and willing to change oftentimes aren't. We point our fingers at our spouse, making our spouse responsible for everything that's wrong. But a lot of the conflict is an internal conflict that we have within ourselves. So how easy or hard or challenging is it to really get people to change?
So the number one thing you just said, you said that Clarence has been this way and Gertrude ain't gonna change. Clarence keeps speaking for Gertrude. Gertrude never get a chance to speak for herself.
Okay.
And so what happens is the couples come and he ain't gonna do nothing. She ain't gonna do nothing. That's just the way she is. Why are you speaking for your spouse? When we find ourselves put in a position that you have an opportunity to speak for yourself, the light bulb goes off.
I got to stop you right there. That is so, I can't tell you how true that is, because when we do discovery calls, typically it is the wife who initiates the process. And oftentimes we try to get them on the call together, but usually a lot of times it's the wife. And when we talk about what the process is, or we talk about an intensive, the number one, there's no way in the world he can sit in a room for 12 hours. He's got HDD or whatever it is. He doesn't have a great attention span. You know, he can't sit for too long. They make every excuse in the book as to why their spouse can't do it. But then, to your point, when you get the other spouse on the phone, they're like, yeah, okay, cool. What do we need to do? When can we get started? And I find that so many women and men who are looking for help get in their own way because they rationalize why their spouse will never be able to do what we have designed for them to do.
So many couples sabotage their own process.
Wow.
They sabotage their own process because, to your point, the lady calls in, my husband will never do it, get him on the phone, I'm willing to do. Then the wife, she backtracks, she retreats. I wasn't expecting him to do this. I wasn't expecting him to say yes. And now we have to get her back on board because she was always saying what he wasn't going to do. And so when we get them on the same page, and to your point, having a mindset change, you have to be willing to be open. You have to be willing to see and know that there's something different. There's something new. There's something that you can actually have. So we get stuck in our own ways and we don't want to grow. We don't want to change. We want to stay where we are.
What do you think is the hardest thing for a couple to overcome in the recovery process? Now, there are many steps to the recovery process that you take couples through. What is the one where they have the most internal and relational struggle?
What I'm finding is that they walk in, they want the help, but they don't want to be 100% transparent and honest. I'm going to give enough to get through the process. And so then stuff still comes up later on. And what happens is, because they are not just giving it all out at one time and give themselves an opportunity to work through that while they have the help, they find themselves struggling even after the process, and sometimes along through the process, because they're not being honest. They're not being open.
You know, that's so funny. I remember, I tell this story all the time. 2 couples that I'm counseling, when I identify the type of resistance you're talking about. There was this couple I did a private marriage intensive with a couple years ago. And we're in sessions and we're going through, full disclosure, and we're going through, other things in that process. And they're so polite and so proper. And yes, Mr. Pettiford, and yes, will you? And they were just too calm. Uh-huh. They were just too polished, too professional. And I'm thinking to myself, they're not being authentic, genuine, and real. And so during breaks, we give them like 10, 15 minutes. They'll go to their room. Gives me time to kind of take a little break. I would hear all this bumping and mumbling and murmuring downstairs in their bedroom. And I would go down there and I was sneaking. I'd be like, what's that noise? What's going on? Breaks over. They come back into the session. Hey, Mr. Pettiford, how you guys doing? Oh, we're doing great. We're doing wonderful. A couple hours later, we take another break, and I hear all this bumping and banging and just, yeah. And so I sneak up on them, and I'm like, what are y'all doing? Oh, Mr. Pettiford, what? And I'm like, you came all this way.
Right.
To lie, to fake, and you spend all this money, travel all this time to be fronting? I said, why in the world would you put on airs with me? You need to bring me into your ugly, into your crazy, into your mess, so I can guide you out of it. And I find that so many people come with all their makeup on, best dressed, polished, looking good, as if they don't come to us because there's a crisis.
Right.
Why do you think people do that?
Image. They want to put on the front. They want to come in and make you think, although they called to get help, that everything is all right, that they are the exception to the rule, right? That we just need a little pep talk. We just need a little boost. We just need a little reassurance, and everything is going to be all right. They never come full open, full honest. They want to hold on to this image that everything is all right. They want to present to you what they present to the world, what they present to their family, what they present to their friends, that we are the couple. We're the go-to couple when they're really not.
Wow. Well, I want you to look in that camera right there. Mm-hmm. And I want you to give that couple who's on the fence, the couple who's ready to throw in the towel, the couple who said things will never change, let me get out now before it's too late. Give them a pep talk as to why they should consider working with you as a practitioner, and how it could be beneficial not only for themselves, but for their family, for their ministry, for the world.
So to the person that is struggling, husband or wife, husband and wife, I would encourage you to reach out, simply because we are here to help. If it's one place that you had to come and find safety, this is the place. We welcome you with loving arms. We welcome you with no judgment. We welcome you with no ridicule. We welcome you to get in the fight with you. So oftentimes you're in the ring and you think that you're fighting each other, you're fighting against the world, you're fighting against everything, all odds. But when you come here, we get in the ring with you. Sometimes we let you take a break, take a rest, because the things that you're fighting over, the things that you're fighting for, is not even worth it. And so too many times we are allowing outside influences, outside forces to cause us to continue to fight. We ask you to come to a space that is serene. We ask you to come to a place that you can finally get poured into. If you've been pouring out to so many people, who has been pouring into you? If you've been giving advice to so many people, who has been giving advice to you? If you have been teaching people the way to go, who has been teaching you? We give you the opportunity to come in to be yourself. We come in to make sure that you're comfortable. We come in to make sure you have just what you need for once you can take a woosah moment and also get what you need. Too many people are suffering in silence. You don't have to anymore. You have found a place that you can come to that is here to serve you, that is here to save you, and ultimately here to celebrate with you. Because once you come here, I promise you will not leave the same.
Wow, powerful message. Couple more questions. One of the questions that I often get, I'm not sure if you get, which also helps them determine whether they're going to move forward, is, so what's your success rate? Tell me about what you've been able to do for other couples. How do you respond to that question?
I respond to that question by, one, letting them know that the couples that we have worked with are available to speak to them. We have testimonials on top of testimonials. I don't like to speak for other couples. I allow the couples to speak for themselves. And couples that we've worked with, they will tell you that they saved my life. They will tell you that coming here was the best investment that they could have ever made. They will tell you that being in this space for the 3 days, for the amount of time that we spent together, has been one of the greatest times that they've had. And I've worked with so many couples that I can call at any given time, and they will welcome my phone call. Likewise, they know that I'm available any given time. And to have that reassurance is one of the best things that they can ever have.
Now, I've been to counseling before, and we went to 3 sessions and stopped. Or couple number 2, I've been in counseling for the last 3-4 months on a weekly basis for an hour, and it was somewhat helpful. But you said something about 3 days. Tell me more about what this 3-day thing really is all about.
So we have traditional counseling where we are going to come for 1 hour, 2 hours. And so oftentimes we have so many couples that come in that say, yes, we have gone to therapy. And basically what they've done is they've gone to a session, they've sat on the couch, and the person just listened to them rant and rave about the problems that they had, but they never had anything to take back home with them. They never had anything to hold them accountable. The 3-day intensive that I'm speaking of is allowing us to come together to unpack the very thing that had brought you to this place of desperation, this place of despair, and give us an opportunity to spend time with you, to get into the weeds of what is causing you to not be in alignment with one another. We walk you through a process, again, of where you are. We walk you through a process of giving you the tools of what you need to overcome where you are, but then also give you what you need that you can walk out of here with something tangible, something experiential that you can experience for yourself that is very life-changing. The 3-day intensive is a mind-blowing transformation, right? We spend 10 to 12 hours together. 10 to 12 hours? Yes, this is not a retreat. This is not something that we're going to be sitting by the pool sipping pina coladas. We want to get you set up that you can do that. Yeah. But this is a place that we come, that we deep dive into your situation. Everything is customized specifically for you, because you know that every couple is different. Every couple is not dealing with the same thing. So we make sure that we speak your language of what you're dealing with so that you get exactly what you need.
Wow. This has been a riveting conversation, and I know that the audience is getting a lot out of it. There's a whole bunch of amens that are happening right now because they can resonate with your message. For anyone who wants to get in touch with you, who wants to work with you, maybe they want to try this 3-day thing that you were talking about, tell the people how they can to reach you.
Well, we're here at Couples Academy, myself, Roland, and Janella Bradley. We are here to serve you. We have an entity, Breakthrough with the Bradleys. You can find us on couplesacademy.org. You can find us on Facebook. We are here. We're here to serve. We're not hard to find. We're here.
Well, Roland, I want to thank you for coming on. I hope this isn't your last, and I would love to have both you and Janella on, because you are a power couple making impact in the lives of so many of those who are in ministry, those who are in leadership, those who are in the church. It's a pleasure to have you on the team because you can speak to the issues in a way that others who don't have the experience may not be able to. So thanks for being on.
Listen,
guys, you've been watching After Infidelity. If you've enjoyed this episode, just wait. There's going to be so much more for you to partake in. So till